Everybody, welcome to another episode of Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Chris Shang, and today we have Oren, who is the co-founder and CEO of Fondue. Thank you so much for joining us.
Longtime listener, first time caller. Happy to be here, Chris.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about what you're working on right now, and then the types of companies that you potentially work with.
Sure. I'm one of the founders at Fondue. We're a cashback, a rebate program manager for Shopify brands. We were bought by Postscript, the number one SMS marketing platform for Shopify brands, about 15 months ago. So what I'm working on right now is I'm on paternity leave. I'm 6 weeks in with my third child. But when I'm not on paternity leave, what I'm doing at Fondue is helping graduate the business from the small startup to enjoying not just the reach, but the best practices of how to build massive scale for the Fondue product and for Postscript broadly.
Very cool. Yeah, so I would love to kind of get into your journey into entrepreneurship and more importantly, becoming a founder. But yeah, where did that all start from? I know that you 10 years ago did some biz dev work, but that's about it. And then from there, you've done some investing. But between that time and then founding your own company, what was the path to knowing that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
It's a good, almost like basic question, but it's a really good one. So I
It's
think,
so different, yeah.
yeah, um, I haven't done a lot of like reflection on this for a while. And I think like my answer totally would have changed pre-acquisition, 6 months into acquisition. But I'm 6 weeks into parental leave, like a real pause on like reflecting back on what this meant for me. So I think part of it is my father, uh, for many years of his career, really didn't enjoy his job. So
Mm,
something that I really seeked was not to be such a millennial, but like real emotional satisfaction from work. He's
yeah,
found that lately, and that's so great. But in my childhood, that wasn't the case. So I was like searching for deep satisfaction from work.
yeah,
First thing, I think being a millennial as well, lots of people, a common path to find that has become entrepreneurship. Um, and so I think between those two things that made me be open to the idea of the binary risk of there's something from nothing. But particularly for starting Fondue is because of my co-founder, William. He started and sold two businesses before. He's got two PhDs, machine learning and public policy. And I so deeply enjoy spending time with him that when he came to me with what was our initial idea, which wound up being terrible and we pivoted, uh, I thought my openness to being a founder was met by the magnetic pull of him. So I put most of the credit to him, frankly.
got it, got it. Interesting. Um, I think that's super powerful. I feel like that's at least something personally I resonate with, which is, you know, I saw my dad like there was a guy that we always grew up with that was like a M&A kind of guy that did a lot of like more like smaller M&A deals locally here in LA. But he had acquired one of the businesses that my dad ended up working for, and he always looked up to this guy, and I was like interesting. And I saw just kind of like the wear and tear of just working for somebody else and how his experience was like. And I this isn't to knock it, but like I never wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to be like the guy that he was aspiring towards,
Sure.
right? I think like that definitely pushed me. And you talk about like finding the binary risk and having it worthwhile. I feel like when you grow up and maybe that speaks to who you are more inherently, but some of those types of things, it's such a strong feeling of like you don't want to be there. Like you just intrinsically know that's going to be creating such a level of dissatisfaction to you that's it's going to drain you, like drain happiness and life out of you. I don't know if that resonates with you at all in terms of like it's almost like the risk is, even if it doesn't pan out and it takes 5 years to figure this thing out to make consistency happen, that the alternative is just like not worth it.
So I don't agree. I'm not allergic to the concept that you can get meaning from working for someone else.
Mm.
I've enjoyed working for other people before. Um, like for me, I do not believe entrepreneurship is the omniscient path to,
Fair.
this this like multivariable equation of what like success means. It could be financial, it could be impact, etc. I don't think that exclusively comes from entrepreneurship.
Mm,
Uh, I think not for all people, but I think also for myself as well. It
got
does
it.
not have to come from there.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think my grandfather, who had like tremendous success across like a number of factors in his career, he never started a company.
Mm,
And so I was contrasting like my father's experience at parts of his career. Again, lately he's been like so satisfied. Like over the past 10 years, it's been great. Um, but neither of them had an entrepreneurial path.
mm, interesting. Um,
I think that's a function of the time, right?
yes.
Like amongst our peers, this is the definition of that is, oh, you want to be happy naturally, you have to be a founder. You can't work for someone else. Um, so I think that the searching for meaning is probably, or like joy from work is a relatively new concept. And the solution to that is entrepreneurship. But
Mm,
it's in vogue. That's where we're taught to find that answer, as
yeah.
opposed to it
That's
doesn't
a
mean
good
it's the
point.
only place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more of like the general like the generational optionality is right now it's
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, but it's not that hasn't historically always been the case in terms of finding happiness and meaning.
Yeah.
Um,
I also think um, in a good economy, people celebrate failure. And
yeah,
up until lately, and even now, it's not so bad. It's not growing in the way that it was before. Inflation stinks, but we've had in our adult lives, I don't know how old you are, Chris, I'm 33, but we haven't seen real economic hardship.
yeah,
Um, and so because of that, people can feel generous and say, oh, even failure, it's fine. We celebrate that at work. That's the luxury of the riches. Um, so I think that's this permission structure to fail that we benefit from that our parents' generation did not.
yeah. It's true. It's very true.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's true.
Um, Interesting. Kind of like this going back to your personal founder journey and entering into entrepreneurship. You had mentioned and credited, your co-founder as being a big reason for that. Uh, can you talk me through what you meant by that in terms of, I know you rattled off a great pedigree of a background there that he had, but in addition to that, did you have like any inclination towards the first iteration of the product and what you guys were building, and was there like, did you have a personal alignment to that mission vision? And that was also a big part of it, in addition to the co-founder and the pedigree of that co-founder, or what were the different variables that really made you feel confident in making that decision?
So one of the things that made me confident was that William was confident. I didn't feel alone in that. And he's someone who like, I tremendously respect his perception of reality or what could be. Um, the other is um, so I was a part of launching a venture fund called Hanaco Ventures. We grew that from about $0 to $1.5 billion in the 4.5 years I was there. And there we started, took no salary for a very long time alongside the rest of the team, and we were able to grow that out in a meaningful way. And I got to see a lot of these founders operate from all sorts of scale. We invested pre-IPO to inception. Um, I really credit the fund that I was a part of at Hanaco for enabling me when I said I'm open to being an entrepreneur. And then they said you can continue to get paid, go explore that. And
Mm,
then when I told that to William and we spent a lot of time thinking about what to do and he had a specific idea, I also benefited from, again, using this phrase permission structure, but like encouragement and financial backing from this fund
sure.
that I was at as well. So it lent itself to a very gradual transition. Um, and like a security blanket one. Like I
Yeah.
could go back to the fund if I didn't find my way. The fund put its own money behind it. And so I tremendously thank Ulior Pasha and Alon for encouraging me and backing me to do this as well. And also I
Mm,
had a very transactional approach to this, which
mm,
is, and I think I over-index on the transactional approach, frankly. I think there's a huge element of self-actualization or like a love of the problem or a love of the craft to help give you the financial and like emotional patience that things will take time, but also just coldly, I thought we had a great idea in a way that perhaps a venture capitalist would underwrite it, which they're often wrong. But then also to have their backing and to do it with William was just lovely uh, circumstances to enable me to do this.
Interesting. You speak about
What
kind of
about you? What about you, Chris?
like, what about me? What's the question here?
What made the opportunity to start Leader Pro
Yeah.
right moment?
Uh, you know what? This is my third startup. And um, I've been involved in entrepreneurship and just kind of like the startup culture and ecosystem for the past almost 12 years now. But I've had a few chapters. You asked me how old I'm at. I am. I'm like, I just hit 45.
Great.
I have a few different, chapters of my career. Started off in investment banking, did TV and film production for like 7 or 8 years. Ended up producing and directing a movie. I sold it to Lionsgate, which was like a horror film, and it was like a childhood dream of mine that I always wanted to do. And so I went and did that, and then I got involved into direct to consumer kind of startup with a couple of buddies of mine from high school that I think more so took pity on me in the fact that like I didn't have a real sense of direction at that time. And I've always been like a creative person, somebody who had the idea for Netflix but couldn't figure out how to build it, like that idea guy on the couch that just felt stagnant and stuck. And it was after that first, because my friends from high school are both more technical people. One's a project manager in Silicon Valley, and then now works at Apple, and the other one, had a dev shop, and so they knew kind of like all the things that develop developing and engineering could do, and I didn't really have that. I wasn't privy to it necessarily
Sure.
at that time. But going through that first experience, I was like all of a sudden realized that you could go and take an idea, and the first transaction that happens, like the first per time a stranger, transacts on your platform, that was the addiction for me. That was kind of like the things like, holy shit, like you could take something that's an idea 6 months ago, make it tangible, and have a real outcome that's financial, right? And so
Yeah.
that point on, I've been involved in startups in every shape, way, form possible, and I've focused in on a niche of like more of the B2B SaaS space, ran a growth marketing agency for 7 years. In between that time, I've worked with now 400 plus venture-backed, startups on go-to-market and growth. I work with a
Wow.
lot of the VCs here in LA around that. And that's what inspired Leader Pro. Leader Pro is basically a scalable version of what we did as a B2B agency,
Wow.
um, but as a marketplace format. And I credit that to Mucker Capital, which is the backers of Honey originally, and um, they're the ones that kind of said like, how do we help you grow what you're doing? And I had two ideas, and to pitch them on the two ideas, they gave me initial 400,000 of pre-seed to just like stop the agency and then build it, and that's what we did. And
Amazing.
luckily, this is number three, and it's been the most successful to date. And I think the only reason for that is because it's very organic to what my area of domain expertise is. And so and it's also, I think when you mentioned the transactional part, I think it's like it's very process driven. A lot of the things that we do are very like iterative, based on feedback loops from existing users and customers. And so we were lucky because when we launched the beta version of our product, we moved basically all of our existing clients from the agency to
Fine.
our
Yeah.
beta customers, right? So we were
Sure.
able to work with that to really, automate a product that wasn't fully there when we launched our beta, but be able to take real market feedback to then get us to a place where we were profitable within, the first 6 months. And so um,
Amazing.
that's kind of our story, and we're growing. We're, consistently growing. There's definitely like a lot more we could be doing, but I think like we are just understanding that this is more of a marathon disguised as a sprint. And if you can accept that that's kind of the way that it works, and that speed is important, but also that you need to be prepared for the long haul, uh,
Totally.
then it changes, I think, like the mindset, and also just maybe like um, the way that you go about it. I think there's a lot more. I'm sure a lot of other founders that I've advised or currently advised would come in and be like, still, they would run around like with a chicken with their head cut off kind of feel. But I think if you kind of put perspective on it, you can attack it differently.
I would have loved to have heard what you just said when I started Fondue. Um, um, I haven't heard that phrase before, which I'm surprised. The marathon disguised as a sprint. That
Yeah,
is it.
I don't know. I mean, maybe that's something I coined, but
No, that is wisdom from experience. That captures a lot, I think.
tell me a little bit why that resonates with you, and maybe it's related back to Fundu. I would love to kind of hear your narrative.
People are like addicted to speed, but there's this tremendous false sense of urgency often. Like
Oh,
I even remember like it is important to service the customer. And I live in Tel Aviv, right?
yeah,
So I moved here in 2018 from New York. And so I'm
awesome.
7 to 10 hours ahead of the East and West Coast in the United States. Our software and our fintech solution was servicing customers, Shopify brands in the United States exclusively. Like I remember I would be up until 2 or 3 a.m. and I keep my phone alarm on. Um, and I was like desperate to service in a real time fashion, but not near real time, truly real time. And that was a miserable existence for me and my wife. And but learning the patience of not needing to do that is uh, is a small example of the marathon described as a sprint. Like there's times to work hard, and that's really important, but you don't have to do that always.
Yeah,
Um, um, yeah,
yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I mean, there's definitely a lot of the advantage, and maybe this is something that resonates with you too, because you came at it from before from an investment perspective through a fund, right? And so
yeah,
you get a lot of exposure, and I think that's really my advantage has been being fortunate enough to have been put in positions to gain access to a bunch of founders, a bunch of startups, and then
yeah,
crowdsource experiments, right? Because as a founder, like to run 10 growth experiments at a single time already feels like that's a lot. But to be able to do, 100 at a single time with 10 across 10 companies, like, and then crowdsource that information and then share back to that community of 10, like what's actually working is a different realm of possibility. And that's been my advantage. And I think like, but it doesn't change, I mean, that's the only difference. It's not like I'm smarter or like have any other real key ways to differentiate. But I'm wondering if you've ever noticed that from like before Fondue coming at it from that person, having like that access, the visibility that most founders don't typically have, right? Like, and seeing maybe like some of those different journeys and the pros and cons of how people made decisions that you guys were working with, the ones that saw successes versus the ones that didn't quite get there, in terms of like being able to analyze that, even if it was anecdotally, if you were able to take away anything.
yeah. I guess some of the things that I benefited from being an investor before was one, knowing how to raise money.
Mhm.
It super was a real blessing. I got coached on that, not coached, but I got to see it firsthand every day. Um, in terms of running multiple experiments or to have multiple learnings going in, um, I think a main thing is that like there is no uh, again, I'm using this phrase, there's no omniscient path to getting it done. You could see people achieving success, even like in my small bubble in the Shopify ecosystem, or if you look at Israel's successes or in Israeli cybersecurity broadly, like there isn't a single way to get it done. So you can't be too married to any specific concept or way to work. So the openness to testing um, was something that I benefited from in terms of being able myself to conduct multiple experiments or to manage teams to do that. That's not something that being an investor gave me because you were servicing the growth experiments for other SaaS companies with your agency, it sounds like.
Yeah,
Whereas you would hear, what experiment worked and what didn't, but we were not the conductors of said experiment. So I think you got to appreciate the nitty gritty, as you call it, like the process needed and the grit to do those. Whereas being an investor, you're just totally removed from conducting said experiments.
fair enough. Um, Interesting. Uh, and then I mean, you kind of talked about this in the beginning, but from from Fondue being acquired by Postscript, in the short amount of time that you from starting the business, can you walk us through what that journey was like in terms of, uh, I mean, first 3 to 6 months of starting anything is like chaos, but then like getting into a place where you started to see growth and then ultimately
Sure.
getting enough growth where it was, attractive enough for an acquisition.
So our first 3 to 6 months was the honeymoon period. We said we were going to raise money. We said we were going to hire a team. We said we were going to get, an MVP out and we'd have design partners. And we had all of that lined up in the beginning, and then we executed on it. And our initial product, which was a refund payouts tool, enabling shoppers to choose what form factor of a refund they want, assuming they don't want it on the original payment method. It was growing in like a satisfactory way. But we eventually had to pivot off of that, one, from some platform risk, building on top Shopify, and two, the monetization wasn't meeting our expectations in terms of like revenue per brand. And actually, my co-founder caught on to it 3 months before me that we're going to have to pivot.
Uh-huh.
I was, as a first-time founder, I think like ashamed and embarrassed that what I felt like I was cashing in a lot of social capital with people,
Mm,
that I was wrong.
mm,
I think we were growing almost good enough to do that. So I think it was really hard to admit we need to do something different. And then once I came around to that, we told the entire team that we are going to do something different. We were very fortunate that we raised over $10 million at inception. So we told everyone, don't quit. We will find another path. We had to do what I call an inclusive pivot, which is inclusive to our shareholders and inclusive to our team. We had about 15 at that point, which was very inefficient because one, you want for retention's sake, for a team that we deeply loved and admired, they all left jobs at some of the largest software companies in Israel to come work for an immigrant to Israel. Um, and they all stayed. This is one of the things I'm most proud of is we had no layoffs or no one quit when we pivoted the company.
oh,
And people who were not founders by choice before, you know, got to be a part of like a founder-esque experience,
yep, yep.
um, which led to too many chefs in the kitchen. But ultimately, when we came across the cashback concept of a coupon code alternative, coupon codes are problematic for a number of reasons in Shopify. We thought that we had a great pivot for two reasons. Number one, people had an emotional reaction to the coupon code problem, which is shoppers use them all the time. They leak all over the internet. You're not going to copy and paste it, even if you're not price sensitive. It's like there's no price discrimination for the shopper just because the form factor of digital discounts are so damn easy. You're going to use it, or just get injected by honey, like you said. So we had an emotional reaction and a measurable one. So we could appeal to people through their emotions and can quantify that which they feel. How much money are you losing to discounts? So there we felt we actually had a really, really great problem to solve that could resonate with people. And then within a year of pivoting, we were able to grow to millions of dollars of annual recurring revenue and then to be acquired. So once we pivoted, we found a great problem to solve. We were able to get that done in about 12 months.
Very cool. And what do you feel like was the key to that? Because getting to a few million in ARR in like 12 months is not an easy feat.
Yeah.
But was it like, I think it's like timing meets opportunity too, right? So like, how much was that a key part of it versus like having a great go-to-market motion?
So both. We had a really good go-to-market motion for a relatively efficient ecosystem. We sell to marketers who are by
Yep.
definition digitally native, and like they discover new ideas primarily on social. So like we knew where to find these people, and that's a very scalable place to meet them.
Mm,
Number two is we were crude. Like we bought, I think you can still go to the website, fuckcouponcodes.com. Like we were crass, which is important on social. And we were calling coupons the devil to a group of people who religiously felt that way. It resonated with them. And the thing I think that we did best on the go-to-market motion is we did not sell case studies about why our product's great, because no one cares about vendors or how good they say their products are.
Hmm.
What we did is we were creating data around the problem that we were solving, and we had great distribution of that. So, for example, like we had product market fit on use our discount. You know, when you go to a website and it says, give me your email and SMS and you get 10% off. So we measured um, like when there's a discount on Black Friday or Cyber Monday or July 4th. Well, how long is July 4th? So we went to the top 1,000 Shopify sites, and every day we'd go to their site. And, a week before and a week after July 4th, do discounts escalate? You know, if you opt in for an email with an email or an SMS discount and you get 5 emails, does the discount escalate? And we measure that across the top 1,000 brands. So we'd be creating these discount indexes, and then we'd benefit from great distribution, essentially asking anyone in our ecosystem, vendor or prospect, meaning brand or software company or agency, to engage in the content with us and to be a part of creating it. I guess so similar to what you're doing here. But we never spoke about how great our product is. We only spoke about the problem. And then if anyone would like to comment or reshare, we did founder-led sales. And I would reply and say, I quit my job and I raised $10 million to solve this problem. Like I would love to show it to you. And if it was to another founder, I would tell them, I totally want you to buy my product. I'm a founder, you're a founder. We're out here trying to will our reality into existence, or trying to turn our vision into a reality. Whatever. I had some cute line that worked well on
Yeah,
social to a very receptive digitally native customer.
that's awesome.
So I'm sorry for being verbose there, but
No, 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 I love it.
this
I
is
think
what we
that's,
did best, was top of funnel.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing. And that's a great exercise. I feel like that's something that is not it's not often seen from my perspective. Like I think a lot of founders get too cutesy and too clever for their own good. And
Oh, we tried cutesy and clever, it just didn't work.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, most of the times it
nothing was
doesn't work.
beneath us,
Yeah,
but it
right.
took us a while to get to this point.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. There's an art in getting to the simplicity and there's art to getting to the simplicity and authenticity. And I think it's a lot of it sometimes like it is a little bit of a fear part of it. Like we're afraid to be judged or a fear of like, asking for help or, putting ourselves in that kind of like vulnerable position of being like, hey, I'm a founder, you're a founder, like help us out kind of thing. Like, we're on the same level, whatever it might be.
oh, I
But
disagree with you, man. I'm gonna like being a founder is magical. People love to spend time with founders.
yeah,
There's some like again, it's not to put us on a pedestal, but there's some aura around it. Like people like to like understand, why are you a founder? What are you building? People care to contribute to a founder's success.
that's true.
Um, the people who are the real grinders are the BDRs, the outbound email people, and the account executives, because that person is transactional. They
Yeah,
want you
I
to
get you.
buy
Yeah,
their product, and that is their like, which I would love for you to do too, but that's part of a form factor, some greater vision of creating a company,
yeah,
right? And there's something interesting about that underlying story, um, where I think if you're a BDR and an AE, you tend not to benefit from that. And
yeah,
so people have a similar motion and work stream,
yeah,
but the disadvantage of people are oftentimes less interested in
yeah.
speaking to
That makes
people.
sense. Yeah, yeah, I get that. Interesting. We could go on for I can go on for a long time, but we're up on time. I just kind of want to end things on one more question here, which is, you recently sold Fondue. You're helping to make the transition with Postscript. What does the future look like for you in terms of, you know, you think you're going to do another startup at some point in time, going back into the investment side of things, taking your time here with Postscript? Like, what are you imagining? What's kind of gonna keep your curiosity? Still a young dude, got plenty of time. You could take the breaks and spend the time with your family. Like, what's really kind of got you motivated?
I'm focused on making Fondue an incredibly successful first acquisition for Postscript. This is what I'm focused on doing. We've got to get that done. Um, this paternity leave has been my first time that I haven't been so operational in achieving that, short, medium term goal. Um, and Postscript has been an incredible home for Fondue.
Mm.
specifically being like if I was a founder going back to October 7th last year in Israel, and I had the responsibilities to help manage and scale the team, raise money, hit numbers, and do that alone as a founder. Um, that would have been really hard with what's going on in Israel, but Postscript has been so gracious to the team. We had in Q4, they just last year they removed all KPIs.
Uh,
They said we totally get it. Like, oh, they said we don't get it, so we don't have any expectations of you.
yeah,
The founders came out here to spend time right as the war started. So I have tremendous gratitude, not only that they bought my company, but that they have been so good to me and the team.
mm,
That is what I'm focused on. What I will also say is like long term, I want to be an investor again at some point. But for now, I want to make this a smashing success for Postscript.
fair enough. On that note, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time today. I know it's late over there, and you've got a kid and the whole nine. So, but thank you so much for carving out some time, sharing your journey. Super interesting perspective, and thank you for sharing your time.
Thank you, Chris.